Have you ever felt like you're meant for more, but something invisible keeps pulling you back? You're currently moving through a particular version of reality, a timeline shaped by your choices, your energy, and your past. But here's the thing, it's not the only one available. Right now, surrounding you, countless parallel realities are pulsing quietly, hovering just beyond the edges of your perception. They're not far, just slightly out of focus, just waiting for you to step into alignment so they can crystallize into form. And yet, most people remain trapped, stuck in familiar loops, replaying the same emotions, repeating the same habits, attracting the same outcomes. They crave something different. They hope, they affirm, they visualize. But the external stays the same, and they wonder why. Let's break that illusion. You're not stuck because of fate, or karma, or some invisible hand of bad luck. You're stuck because your entire system, your thoughts, your emotions, your nervous system, your energetic signature is still synchronized with the frequency of your current timeline. And you can't escape that loop just by wishing harder. You won't shift it by pushing or pretending. The quantum field can't be fooled by empty declarations. A true shift doesn't come from more force. It comes from more alignment. Quantum change begins when you enter a new state of being so deeply, so fully, that the field has no option but to reflect back a new version of reality. Let's pull the curtain back for a moment. Most people think manifestation is about wanting something intensely, as if craving it with all your heart is enough to make the universe hand it over. But here's the part almost no one says out loud in the quantum realm. Desire alone holds no weight. The field doesn't care how badly you want something to change. It doesn't respond to longing. It responds to alignment. So even if you're doing all the right things, speaking affirmations, visualizing your dream life, building vision boards, there's a chance you're still broadcasting the energy of your current, outdated reality. Why? Because beneath the surface, your body is still wired to the past. Your nervous system is calibrated to what's familiar, even if what's familiar is limiting. Your subconscious is running scripts of fear, doubt, scarcity on repeat while your conscious mind is busy chanting. I choose abundance, I choose love, I choose success. And here's the twist most people miss. The quantum doesn't react to the loudest voice. It tunes into the most consistent signal, the dominant frequency you emit with your entire being. That signal doesn't come from what you say, but from what you are, what you feel in your gut, what your body expects, what your energy actually lives out. That's why you can repeat, I am wealthy 1,000 times. But if your stomach tightens in panic every time you open your banking app, the field doesn't register abundance, it registers fear. That's why you can spend hours visualizing love. But if your heart is guarded and afraid to trust, the field mirrors back distance, not connection. This is the hidden pattern that keeps so many people circling the same life outcomes. They keep trying to change the outside, chasing new results, new relationships, new opportunities, hoping something will finally shift. But in quantum terms, true change never begins out there. It starts inside with frequency, with coherence, with embodiment. Real transformation doesn't begin with effort. It begins with energy. It begins with the inner state you live in, the emotional, mental, and energetic alignment you carry through your body each day. That's where the shift starts. Not out there, but inside. To access a different timeline, you don't wait for proof. You become the person who already lives in that reality right here, right now, before anything on the outside changes. That's the paradox. and that's the power. Quantum physics shows us that every possibility already exists in a field of infinite potential. Every version of you, every outcome you've dreamed of, every path you could walk. They're all already here, vibrating in parallel, waiting for you to tune into them. So when your frequency shifts, you're not creating something new from scratch. You're syncing up with a version of reality that's always been available. You're collapsing into a life that's been waiting for you to meet it. That's why mystics, scientists, and visionaries from ancient traditions to modern minds have always spoken of the language of frequency. Numbers, symbols, patterns. Nikola Tesla once said, "If you only knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you would have the key to the universe." He wasn't speaking in metaphors. These numbers reflect the structure of the universe itself, how energy moves, how vibration builds form, how reality organizes itself in code. This isn't magic, it's mechanics. So maybe the real question isn't, how do I get what I want? Maybe it's, who do I need to become to naturally attract that version of life? And no, becoming doesn't mean pretending. It's not about acting like someone else. It's not about faking confidence or forcing positivity. Becoming is embodiment, a deep, honest alignment of your whole system. Your thoughts, your emotions, your nervous system, your actions with the energy of who you're ready to be. That's when the quantum field starts to respond differently. Not because you're trying harder, but because you're broadcasting something new. You're no longer pushing against the old timeline. You're rising into the frequency of the new one. But before we dive into how to actually do that, pause here for a moment. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what version of me made the choices I've made today? What timeline have I been feeding with my energy, my thoughts, my attention, and am I willing to let that version go? Let those questions settle in your body, not as judgment, but as invitation. Because what we're about to explore next is the part most people skip over. The invisible patterns that keep you locked in loops, the resistance that hides in the nervous system, the emotional imprints and subconscious programs that quietly override your best intentions. This is why so many people know the concepts quantum shift, manifestation, attraction, but never experience the change. And no, it's not because they're lazy, or because they don't want it enough, or because they're doing it wrong. It's because they're still entangled with the part of themselves that's designed to survive the old timeline. The part that clings to what's known. The part that sees the familiar as safer than the unknown, even if that familiarity comes with pain. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The old version of you doesn't need permission to keep running the show. It just needs your unconscious agreement. Every time you react the same way, tell the same story, expect the same outcome, you're reinforcing the signal. It's like a groove in your brain. The more you walk it, the deeper it gets. Eventually, it becomes automatic. And at that point, you're no longer choosing your timeline. It's choosing you. This is where science and spirit meet, where quantum physics and neuroscience quietly intersect in a way most people never notice. In quantum theory, there's something called the observer effect. It means that the very act of observing turns possibility into form. A wave of potential becomes a particle, an outcome, a reality. But here's the part we often overlook. You're not observing reality just with your eyes. You're observing it with your entire system, with your thoughts. Yes, but also with your beliefs, your emotions, your expectations, and your embodied state. Now let's bring in behavioral neuroscience specifically. Daniel Kahneman's theory of two brain systems. According to his research, your mind operates through two distinct modes. System 1 fast, automatic, emotional, subconscious. And System 2 slow, deliberate, logical, conscious. Here's the catch. Most of your behavior, up to 95% of it, is governed by System 1. This system runs on patterns, on emotional memory, on ingrained scripts that were wired into your brain long before you even realized it. So even if your System 2, or in other words, your conscious, is saying, I choose growth, I want change, I believe in abundance, your System 1 might still be bracing for disappointment, expecting rejection, clinging to familiar pain because that's what it knows. That's what feels safe. And in quantum terms, the field doesn't respond to the words spoken by System 2. It responds to the dominant frequency broadcast by System 1. That's why so many manifestation practices feel like they don't work, not because the desire isn't sincere, but because the inner observer, the one doing most of the observing, is still tuned to the frequency of the old reality. Until System 1 is retrained, until those automatic emotional reflexes are rewired, the timeline can't shift. Not sustainably, not coherently, no matter how powerful your affirmations are. This is the hidden reason manifestation so often feels like it's not working. It's not because you don't want it badly enough. It's because the inner observer, your subconscious, is still tuned to the old frequency. And as long as that internal observer hasn't shifted, the timeline can't either. That's why people change jobs, move cities, start new relationships, yet somehow keep reliving the same emotional stories. Because nothing external has the power to overwrite an internal pattern that hasn't been healed or rewired. Let me put it simply. If the one doing the observing you hasn't changed, then the outcome can't either. So what keeps you tied to the old version of yourself? In a word, resistance. And resistance is tricky. It doesn't always look like fear. Sometimes it shows up as endless overthinking. Sometimes it's disguised as procrastination, or as staying too busy to feel. It can even wear the mask of logic, the voice that says, let's be realistic. But underneath it all, resistance is just your system trying to protect you, trying to keep you where it feels safe, even if safe is stressful, limiting, or suffocating. That protective mechanism lives in the body, in stored memories, in emotional residue, in inherited beliefs you didn't even choose. And that's why it's possible to understand something with your mind and still not be able to live it. It's why affirmations feel empty, why visualizations don't stick, why you keep snapping back into the same loops, even when you know better. Because resistance doesn't live in your mindset, it lives in your nervous system. When that system is dysregulated, when it's stuck in a pattern of scanning for danger, preparing for disappointment, bracing for the worst, it sends out a very different signal to the field. You might be saying, I'm ready, but your body is still saying, not yet. And that mismatch, that internal contradiction, is what keeps collapsing the same old outcomes. It's not a punishment. It's not a personal failure. It's just physics. Nikola Tesla once said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. He wasn't speaking in riddles. He meant it literally, because your entire life is frequency. Your thoughts, your emotions, the way you breathe, the way you hold your body, they all emit a pattern, a signal. And that signal is either in sync with the version of reality you want to experience, or it's pushing it further away. That's why so many people feel drawn to certain numbers, like 369, or ancient symbols like sacred geometry. It's not just aesthetics, it's resonance. Some part of them intuitively remembers that the universe doesn't speak in words. not just a human moving through a neutral world. You are a living, breathing transmitter, a frequency generator in a responsive field. And if you've been sending out the same signal for long enough, it's easy to forget it's even a signal. It starts to feel like you, like your identity, like truth. But here's the shift. You don't have to fight that old signal. You don't have to overpower it or force it into submission. You just have to stop feeding it. So take a moment and be honest with yourself. Where are you still vibrating in fear? While saying you trust, where are you tensing for rejection? While craving connection? Where are you trying to attract more, while quietly believing you don't deserve it? These small inner contradictions may seem subtle, but they carry weight. They're the invisible threads that anchor you to an old timeline. And until they're brought into awareness, until they're gently rewired, the field keeps mirroring back the same loop. But in the next part of this journey, we're going to change that. We're going to move beyond theory into embodiment. You'll learn how to bring your mind and body into alignment, how to regulate your system into safety, and how to start living, not just visualizing the version of you that already belongs in your new timeline. So let's bring this back down to earth. Up to this point, we've talked about energy, frequency, timelines. But theory alone doesn't create change. You don't shift by understanding. You shift by living it moment by moment. The question now isn't, what else do I need to learn? It's, am I ready to live what I already know? Because the only practice that truly matters is the one you embody. We live in a time where it's easy to collect wisdom, to binge on books, videos, techniques, to feel like we're evolving simply because we've consumed the right content. But here's the truth, knowing isn't growing. Progress doesn't happen when you hear something inspiring. Progress happens when your breath changes, when your reactions soften, when your body starts doing something different than it did yesterday. So how do we start living the quantum shift in our actual day-to-day lives? It begins with something called micro-alignment. Most people think stepping into a new timeline requires some grand transformation, a leap of faith, a huge external shift. But in the quantum, it's not size that creates impact. It's coherence, a small, sincere action taken from a place of true alignment carries more vibrational power than a big dramatic move made from fear or pressure. Let's make this tangible. If you're aligning with a timeline of abundance, your shift might be as simple as pausing to breathe when scarcity thoughts creep in, refusing to spiral. It might mean thanking your current resources, no matter how small, and letting that gratitude amplify the frequency of enough. It could be choosing to spend money slowly, with trust rather than quickly, with guilt or panic. If you're stepping into a love timeline, maybe it means opening your chest when you feel the urge to close off. It could be reaching out with tenderness instead of retreating in silence, or saying something kind, even when vulnerability feels uncomfortable. If you're moving toward a timeline of health, the shift might be noticing the parts of your body that already feel alive, no matter how small. It might mean feeding yourself with respect instead of judgment. Moving your body because it deserves love, not punishment. Catching that inner critic mid-sentence and gently replacing it with care. These aren't huge acts, but they're energetic signals, and the field listens. These small, dense, intentional choices, though quiet, are powerful signals. They're not just habits, they're declarations. Each one says to the field, this is who I am now, not who I hope to become someday, but who I've decided to be today. And here's the part that so many people miss. This practice isn't about being perfect. It's about returning. You will wobble. You'll slip back into the old mindset. You'll catch yourself thinking from fear, reacting from old patterns, bracing for the worst, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. The power isn't in never drifting off course. The power is in how gently and how often you come back. Every time you notice the shift in your state and choose to realign, even subtly, you're strengthening the new timeline. Every time you pause instead of spiraling, breathe instead of reacting, soften instead of bracing, you're reinforcing the shift. Every time you show up as if your new reality is already true, even if nothing outside has changed yet, you collapse the wave into form. This is the essence of quantum embodiment. It's not flashy, it's not loud. It's a quiet, consistent dance with the field. And while no tool can replace embodiment, certain practices can help you stay tuned. For some, that's breathwork, retraining the body to feel safe in expansion. For others, it might be meditation, visualization, movement, or sound. Some feel a deep connection with sacred numbers like 3 to 6 to 9, or 777, or geometric symbols that resonate with the intelligence of the universe. These aren't shortcuts, they're anchors. They give your subconscious something to hold on to, a reminder that says, I'm not trying to shift, I already am. But don't confuse the tool with the transformation. Rituals don't create the shift. You do. The practice works because you're working it. So here's your invitation, right here, right now. Pick one old pattern you're ready to interrupt today, just one. Then choose a simple, grounded act that represents the new timeline. Nothing big, nothing dramatic, just real. It could be as small as 3 intentional breaths before you respond to something that usually triggers you. It could be speaking one sentence from your empowered self instead of your fearful one, or quietly imagining yourself surrounded by the energy of the life you're stepping into. It's not what you do that matters most. It's how you do it. With presence, with sincerity, with love. And here's the best part. The quantum doesn't operate on delay. It responds instantly to your current signal. The shift isn't waiting for the perfect moment. It's waiting for your participation. And as you begin, remember you're not walking this alone. You're part of something larger, a quiet uprising, a collective of humans remembering who they are, reclaiming their creative power, learning together how to move in rhythm with the field. This space, this conversation isn't just a video. It's an energetic invitation, a place you can return to again and again as you recalibrate to your true frequency. And if something within you stirred while listening, if a quiet pulse of possibility started rising inside, then stay close. Not just by subscribing, but by staying connected to yourself, to this kind of dialogue, to the version of you that already knows. And before we move into the final stretch of this journey, I invite you to do one simple thing. In the comments, share one small act you're choosing today, something that anchors you into your next timeline. It could be one word: breathe, trust, open. It might seem small, but it's not. Your word matters. Your energy matters. You matter. Now, here we are at the final step. You've traveled far through science, energy, the subconscious mind, and the quiet power of embodiment. But here's where the real work begins. Not in shifting, but in staying shifted. Because the quantum field doesn't respond to visits. It responds to residency. And most people treat manifestation like a one-time event. They visualize, they journal, they hope. And when nothing seems to happen, they collapse right back into the old frequency, not realizing that the real magic is in sustaining the signal. This isn't about pretending to be high vibe all the time. It's not about faking positivity or avoiding the hard stuff. It's about building the capacity to return again and again, to come back to center, to breathe into coherence, to realign when life tries to knock you off track. Because every time you do, you make the new timeline more stable, more real, more you. And the old one, it starts to dissolve, not with force, but through non-participation. So how do you begin to shift what System 1 is broadcasting? And more importantly, once you feel that shift, how do you stay there? How do you keep living as the version of you who already belongs in the reality you're calling in? You don't overpower your subconscious. You retrain it gently, consistently, moment by moment. It begins by creating space between stimulus and response. Just a pause 3 seconds is enough to open the door for System 2 to step in. From that space, everything begins to shift. Here's a simple, grounded map with 5 core practices, each one helping you rewrite automatic patterns, regulate your nervous system, and stay anchored in your chosen timeline. First, daily awareness. Start your day with intention, not urgency. Before you even get out of bed, check in with yourself. What energy am I carrying today? Am I operating from fear or from trust? Am I expecting struggle or opening to ease? This simple check-in each morning is how you begin to set your frequency before the world has a chance to do it for you. Then, throughout your day, take conscious pauses, especially in moments of tension when you feel triggered by a comment, an email, a glance. In that very moment, take one conscious breath. It may seem small, but it's not. That breath is a sacred interruption, a soft but powerful signal to your nervous system. We're not in danger. We don't need to react. We're safe now, and we can choose. Breathe first, then respond. That's how you begin rewriting the script, one moment at a time. Second, emotional regulation. System 1 runs on unspoken emotions. It thrives in reactivity, but you can soften its grip by doing one thing, naming what you feel. This is fear. This is shame. This is doubt. By bringing the emotion into conscious light, you begin to tame it. And when life inevitably knocks you off center, because it will, don't resist it. Return, breathe, ground, and gently remind yourself, this is who I am now. Third, embodied micro-actions. You don't need dramatic changes to enter a new timeline. You need small, repeated signals, micro-alignments that teach System 1 a new normal. Speak kindly to yourself when you make a mistake. Stand tall when you feel like shrinking. Thank your body instead of criticizing it. Choose generosity over scarcity. Open your heart even when it's uncomfortable. Each act is more than a behavior, it's a signal to the field. Fourth, symbols and safe environments. Your subconscious responds deeply to visual, energetic, and environmental cues. So surround yourself with symbols of your future self. Words and mantras that anchor your new identity. Art or sound that evokes the energy you want to live in. And just as important, protect your frequency. Stay close to people, places, and communities that nourish your alignment, not drain it. Because safety is the soil where all rewiring takes root. Let your external world support your internal shift. Fifth, gratitude is a signal of completion. Gratitude is not just polite, it's energetic completion. It tells the field, I already have, I already am, I'm already whole. The more you feel gratitude before the proof arrives, the faster the timeline transfer into form. So don't practice to get somewhere. Practice because this is the somewhere. You're not chasing the timeline anymore. You're becoming it. And remember, the goal isn't perfection. The goal is return. To gently return again and again to the version of you who no longer reacts from survival, but responds from coherence. Because once System 1, or in other words, your subconscious starts to actually trust this new way of being, something shifts. Your whole signal changes. And when that happens, the field listens. So thank you for showing up, for listening deeply, for daring to become more of who you truly are. You're not the same person who pressed play. Your frequency has already shifted even slightly. And now, it's not about remembering every word we've shared. It's about what you do next. So, here's my gentle invitation in the next 24 hours. Surprise yourself. Do one small thing that belongs to the version of you already living in your chosen timeline. Maybe it's a choice, maybe a conversation, maybe just a new thought. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. And when you do it, know this. You're not waiting for change anymore. You are the change. If this space feels like home, subscribe. Not because you're following a channel, but because you're stepping into a frequency where this kind of awakening is our baseline. Where we rise together. Keep going. Keep choosing. Keep surprising yourself. Because every time you do, the quantum field listens, and it always responds.